Hello and welcome to the Rotary eClub of Silicon Valley. Every week we bring to you a new program on technology, education, innovation, and humanitarian service. My name is Midi Chang. I am president of this Rotary Club. Thank you for joining us this week. It's going to be my pleasure to introduce one of our members on the call and who will be introducing our guest speaker for the week. To my left, as I see it, is our member, Sviako. Sviako, wave hi to everyone. Sviako is one of our members and board members. He is also one of our travelers in Africa. He currently is based out of South Africa, but is currently, I think, still in Zambia, if I'm correct, at the time of this recording. But he can correct me if I'm wrong. Sviako has introduced us to our wonderful guest speaker this week, and so he'll be talking a little bit about her and how he knows her. Sviako, please take it away.
Thanks, Midi. Yes, still in Zambia for the time being. So I am very excited that this week we'll have Shilpa presenting to us about a very exciting topic, very interesting topic. So I've known Shilpa for quite some time, I think over 5 years. We met in Minnesota. She is the founder and executive director of Search for Water, which is a very interesting global nonprofit organization which is focused on providing clean water and sanitation to communities throughout the world. I have followed them almost from the very start, and it's been incredibly cool to see how the organization has grown both, in their awareness in the communities in the U.S. where they're based, but also in the impact that they're having around the world. So I'm very excited for Shilpa to be sharing her story today. And I think you all will find it very interesting as well. So Shilpa, thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to your story.
Thank you, Sviako. It's great to be here and to meet your members virtually. Hopefully at some point I get to see more of you in person, but I usually like to start these conversations about Surge's work about water and sanitation by introducing you to a scene, because I feel like that frames the conversation well. So I'd ask you to imagine that you're with me in eastern Uganda, northeast of Uganda, in a district called Kabramaito that has 230,000 people. 80% of those people live below the poverty line. And some of the village leaders or community leaders, there's 230,000 people here, refer to this district as like the forgotten land because there's no power, water sources are, pretty much non-existent or completely destroyed. They're currently going through a bit of a famine. It just started raining, so things are a little bit better. So the situation's quite bad there. And, that's the setting we're in. And, now I want you to think about it being a really rainy day, one of the rainiest days you might have experienced. And I want you to imagine walking through shin-deep, muddy water. Think about being afraid of the leeches and the parasites that are in that water. Your clothes are soaking wet, and you're incredibly cold while you're fighting off this constant stream of mosquitoes. Your body's covered entirely in dirt. Your feet are caked in mud. And there's a real chance of malaria, or dengue, or any other water-related illness, and who knows what else. And you finally get to the water source, which was the destination you were trying to get to, and trying to get to the screen. You get to the water source, and you basically see brown, stagnant, murky water, and you take turns getting down on your knees to fill your dirty jerry can with your share of this water. Now think about this. This water is the same water that you've washed your dirty clothes in. It's the same water the animals have pooped in. But you're going to drink this water and you'll feed it to your little children because you have no other option. This dirty water is the only choice this mother has for her family's survival. And I always want people, when you think about the statistics of the global water crisis and you it's over 600 million people that don't have access to water, and 2.4 billion people that don't have access to a toilet. And when you start looking in numbers this large, it can get overwhelming, even for me, and I work in this space. And I always remind myself that it's about the individual people. It's about these women that I've all met. I actually took this photograph in Uganda about a year ago, because it's rainy season right now. And you meet the people and you hear their stories, and then you start realizing that when you talk about 663 million people or 2.4 billion without a toilet, it's not so overwhelming anymore when you start thinking about the individual lives that you can help and the individual stories you can change. And with that, I want to introduce you to Surge, and then that's why we exist, because we recognize that this issue is so large that many more people need to be involved in solving it. And our organization, Surge for Water, works towards this goal. Our mission is really to help end the cycle of poverty, and we have chosen water and sanitation access as a way to achieve this mission. And of course, there are many other ways to get to it. But we've seen through our work that water is really one of those cross-sectional basic needs that really can transform communities. Because when you see situations where people have dirty water, just like in that introductory scene that I shared with you, that leads to children being sick and missing school, and impacting their entire lives henceforth. You look at mothers who are spending time walking those long distances in the rain, in murky water, to collect this water instead of caring for their families, helping with farming or just other livelihood type of activities. I think the World Bank statistic is that for every dollar invested in water, it's like a $3 to $34 return on that investment. So it really is a way to address ending the cycle of poverty. So that's where we're coming from. And since we started work in 2008, from when I first met Sviako in Minnesota, we've impacted over 400,000, or nearly 400,000 people. We're almost over 400,000 people in 11 countries. Uganda is one of them, but we're actively working right now in Cambodia, Philippines, Dominican Republic, and Haiti. And actually, in the Philippines, our partner organization has a very close relationship with the Rotary. And one of the biggest projects that they're working on right now is funded by a Rotary Global Grant, where they're distributing biosand filters to the remote parts of the Philippines and Mindanao. So very familiar with Rotary's work in some of the countries that we work with. So a little bit more about Surge. There's many organizations out there that are working on water, and as I mentioned, there's right now a need for all of us to be in this space, just because the issue is this large. I'd like to describe Surge's model in three different ways. We're community driven, and I say this because we don't come in as a foreign organization. We're based in the U.S., in Chicago, and in Dubai. We don't go into these communities and enforce our way of doing things or the solutions that we may think are the most appropriate. We actually talk to the community leaders, the local governments, and we spend a lot of time getting to know them and make sure that whatever solution we're introducing is really owned and initiated by them. And this applies to everything we do. When we talk about our solutions, we took a long time thinking about how we should describe our go-to-market, like what solutions are we using, because we do everything. So at Surge, we do everything from water access, so anything from wells, rainwater harvesting tanks, purification. So then that's, your household filtration units or community filtration. And then you talk about sanitation, so toilets for homes, toilets for schools. And then we have these education programs that are cross-sectional, like address all of these, to teach about sanitation and hygiene. And we just recently launched a menstrual hygiene program because we've noticed that in our work, the girl child is among the most impacted because they're missing school because of their conditions of toilets and sanitation in their schools. So we address all of these things, and we really find these customized, tailored solutions and really look at what the impact is going to be when we implement them. And while we think of all these solutions, brings me to my final point, which is we think about sustainability in everything we do, not just a buzzword, because we do recognize the word sustainability is used a lot, kind of flippantly these days. And for us, what sustainable means is, really thinking about the different elements. So is our solution something that can be maintained and owned by the community after we're gone? So can they get replacement parts there? Can they understand the technology? When you're thinking about the water source, so think about social sustainability. We can't just go build a water source and then create a civil war between a community, because you have to make sure it's in the right place and you've accounted for all the different, like perhaps conflicts in the region or in that area. Or you look at the environment. When we talk about sustainability with the environment, we try really hard to only use nature-based solutions. So what that would mean something like building a rainwater harvesting tank versus perhaps drilling a well, if that's an option. Using, biosand filters or ceramic filters, so like earth-based, nature-based materials. We actually spend a lot of time fixing broken wells versus building new ones, because the statistics in the world are, I think it's like four to six wells in the world are actually malfunctioning. So it's way cheaper. It's like 1/5 to like 1/10 the cost to go in and change the piping in an existing well that's not working at all than to go build a new one. So, those are the kinds of things that we consider in our approach. And what's not on this slide is something else that's unique to us, is that we have the stamp that says 100% to the cause. So we're really lean. We have very low overhead. So we're able to take 100% of public donations and go directly towards our water and sanitation projects, because we have sponsors and, certain individuals who fund our very lean, overhead costs. So that's the model. That's how we work. And, I think pictures, speak 1,000 words, as they say. So I wanted to show you a couple of before and after so you can actually see some of the impact of the things we do. So that's the same water source that I talked to you about in Kabramaida, Uganda, on the left. And there you see, it speaks for itself. We replace it with a shiny new well that has beautiful, clean water coming out of it. So that's an example of our water access. When you talk about purification, we go into these communities and you see kids drinking water right from the streams and the rivers and the swamps, and we work on household filtration. The woman in the picture, her name's Josephine Aimo. She's actually in her restaurant in Kabramaida, Uganda, and it's a really cool story. She got this filter from us in her restaurant, and ever since she has this filter, she has so many new customers, because everybody in the village heard about her new filter and has started coming to her restaurant. So she's like 50 more customers a day or something really, really crazy, all because they know that they can get safe water. Her food was always great, but there's added incentive. So when we met her, she was just ecstatic about the impact that safe water has had to her business. So again, going back to my original point about how water can actually add revenue to a community. This is a picture of a toilet before and after. It's again, the picture speaks for itself. Like it's, and it's crazy because we'd actually, in some of these, so we do toilets for both households and for communities and for schools, sorry. So this is a toilet for school, and we actually, as I said earlier, we have a higher focus on the girl child in our sanitation interventions. But it's such a big issue in some of the parts of the world we work in that we almost have to choose the toilets we're replacing based on what our prediction of when the toilet's going to collapse in on itself. So if you see a toilet like the bad one in this picture, if we think that that's going to be stable enough for a little longer, we'll go and work on another one that's probably going to fall at an earlier time, because they're not drainable. The way they've been built, as you can see, is not something that's stable. And you have a couple of bad seasons of weather, and all the waste that's been collected in a bad way. It leads to a disaster, and we replace them with these beautiful new buildings that are drainable toilets. And we've actually also started working with eco-sand toilets in some of the countries we're in. And if you're not familiar with that, it goes back to what I talked about, our focus on nature-based solutions. Eco-sand toilets create a closed loop between sanitation and agriculture. So you can use the waste, once it's handled in a certain way, to then work on the on farming. And we've started these new concepts in Uganda and in Kabramaito again, where we're calling them eco schools, and everything that we're doing in the school in relation to water and sanitation kind of stretches even beyond our core mission, because we make sure that, okay, if that school has the ability to grow food, remember I talked to you about this community being malnourished, maybe we can also help with agriculture by putting in these eco sand toilets, and maybe we can build a slightly bigger water harvest tank, and fix the well too, so that they have more water both to drink and for them to farm, so the children can eat while they're at school. So we talked about access, we talked about purification and sanitation, and the final part that pulls it all together for us are our education programs. And this slide deck, I'm noticing as I'm talking, is highly focused on Uganda, so I may bring in a couple more country examples here, but these again are pictures from Uganda. The kids on the left are making soap. So we not only teach them about sanitation and hygiene, we realize that because there's a lack of supplies and a lack of money to buy stuff, how about we teach them affordable ways to make things and perhaps even sell them. So there they are. You can see how, they're having fun. One, they're like learning how to be like scientists, and they're like learning how to do something so that they have a skill, and they're enjoying it. And the girl, she's holding a reusable menstrual hygiene pad. Because one of the things we found is, yes, they don't have the facilities in school, but they don't even have the products. So, and they can't afford to buy disposable stuff. And then, of course, what are they going to do with the disposable ones? So an example of our interventions is that we are teaching children, and all the girls in the background in that picture are all in little groups, learning how to make these reusable pads. So we're teaching people how to make soap and pads, and we keep expanding our program as the community drives us to doing that. And as I said, I wanted to share a little bit about another country. In Haiti this week, we just launched a program in Cité Soleil, which is, I guess it's most well known as being the largest slum in the Western Hemisphere. But I know it as the City of Sun, as the name is what the name means. And we just started a hygiene ambassador program there, where we hired with our partner Ana Kawana, which is a soap recycling business. And what we've done is we've hired 3 hygiene ambassadors. So again, one of the things that everybody needs in the community when you talk about sustainability are jobs, right? They need jobs, so they have money, so they can live. And we've hired these 3 hygiene ambassadors, and every day they're going to go to a home or a school as per their schedule. They're going to go door to door and teach households about sanitation and hygiene. And more than just teach, this is kind of the first project of this kind that's being done in this like sub community. They're going to teach people, they're going to learn from people, they're going to learn about the issues, so then we can come back in with those community driven solutions that I was talking about. So that's the kind of work that we're doing, really listening to what the community wants, and then identifying the solution that best fits and that's sustainable beyond, it has longevity beyond us. One of the key things that we think about is that we want to make sure that there's not a dependency created on surge, that the communities can continue to look after the solution or generate revenue from the solutions and, support themselves when we've left and moved on to the next place. This is this little girl here. Her name is Diana Vasquez. I was in the Dominican Republic about couple weeks ago, actually a couple months ago now. This was in February, and she's 7 years old. And I love, again, putting faces behind these statistics. So Diana, when you ask her what she wanted to be when she grows up, she said she wanted to be a chef, and that her favorite subjects in school were Spanish and mathematics. And it's really special because when you look at what she's drinking, that's a filter that's giving her safe water. In her family, she has 2 sisters and her mom, and I think her grandmother lives in her house too. They have a rainwater harvesting tank, and they have a water filtration unit. Both Surge sponsored funded projects through our local partner. And she now has safe water, which means that she misses less school, and she can get an education, and she can dream big, and she can do things like become a chef or anything she wants to be. And it really all does start with being healthy and like being able to make it to the class and like enjoy those subjects. I don't have a picture of the next person I want to talk about, but I always, I was thinking about this talk and speaking to Rotarians. And your club is a lot about service and giving off yourself. And something that really strikes me is, whenever I'm in the field, like I've actually taken a lot of these pictures myself, right? When I've traveled to these countries, and, I feel really fulfilled when I'm in the field and I'm meeting these people and I'm hearing these stories firsthand. And obviously I also feel really devastated when I see the issues, and sometimes we can't always help. But overall, there's this great sense of like self-fulfillment, and it's really rewarding when I do this kind of work. And there was this one day in Uganda when a village elder, his name is Ivuku Moses. He's like the 70-year-old village elder. And I will never forget this moment because he looked me in the eyes and he thanked me for making him feel like a human being again. Because he used to be on his knees alongside the pigs and the cows, drinking water out of this murky brown hole, similar to the picture I showed you. And what's really striking about this conversation is that when Mr. Ivuku Moses looked me in the eyes and he told me that, there's something that he didn't realize, and was that I actually felt like a human being again, because by doing this work, I'm gaining so much. So yes, we're giving so much to so many people, but I always want to make it clear that it's not about that. It's not about us versus them. Like we're all in this together. And, part of our culture at Surge and our mission is really like and truly for us to gain, but for them to gain too, and to like really do this together. Because, it is shared humanity, and it is one world, and it is one water. And, that's just really a big part of our message that I always want to get across, that we're not the saviors coming in. In many cases, we are being saved ourselves. So in the spirit of service, it's an important message to share. So, that's kind of the highlights of our work. I'm happy to answer more questions later. Just have a couple of ways, I get that this is an e-club, but it will be put out, but I feel like there are a couple of ways that people can get involved from wherever they are. If anyone happens to be in Chicago or even in the US and wants to come down, Sviatka has been to our gala. So I always want to put this out there. We do a large gala in Chicago and in Dubai. Actually, the Rotary Club in Dubai has been very involved with us in helping with our events over there. But, anyone's welcome to come. This year, we're actually even thinking about going back to Minneapolis. So if anyone happens to be from there, please come to our events. It's a great way to learn about our cause and, just give back in a tangible way. But sometimes events are not for people. So, if you are absolutely welcome to help us through your club, individually through your companies. We have corporate sponsor packages, individual ways. A little money goes a long way with our work. It doesn't cost that much to, the filter that I showed you in Josephine Amo's restaurant It's like under $20, and that's bringing so many people safe water. Fixing a well, like this picture right here, is a couple thousand. So it's really low cost to impact a lot of people, in a sustainable way. And I'd finally like to invite you guys to think about coming with us to the field. We're taking people on these impact trips. We're really, really cognizant on these trips to make sure that we're not taking away any jobs from locals. So we don't build anything, and we don't, do anything that a local could be hired for. What we do is really more of like our education programs and cultural exchange, and we'll do like paintings on some of those toilets we've built, and we'll help with farming, and we'll do the menstrual hygiene classes in collaboration with the local teachers that we've hired. So really like partnering with the locals and, helping develop our programs, meeting our beneficiaries, meeting the local leaders. So it's an invitation for anybody who's interested, definitely reach out to us so that you can join us in one of these trips and just really learn about our work and our culture firsthand. So that's all I have in terms of a presentation. Let's see if I can find my way back to the screen. Right here. Can you guys?
Yeah, you're doing great. At the top, there's a stop share button.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions or share more about any aspects of our work.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. So I'll start off the first question, and I think I'll pass it to Suyako. Hearing the stories you were talking about just reminded me how important water is. But I love the work you're doing. So thank you for doing what you're doing. And I was wondering if, you could tell us a little bit more about how Surge first started. What were your first 6 months like? How did you get off the ground? And, who are your collaborators? And, did you start by, how did you identify your first location that you were going to go to? Those kind of questions where I think it'd be interesting to hear that kind of origin story for a great organization that you guys are already running at full speed with.
Sure. Yeah, sometimes I forget about the initial days, right? So, for me personally, right? So, since I'm one of the founders, the story is very personal to me. So I always answer this question even more in a slightly longer way. So excuse me for this, but I feel like it had started way before the organization was even launched, because it was something that I was always called to do. Now, it manifested itself in Surge, but recognizing that I came from a place of privilege and that I had the ability, both financially and skills to help, and I knew I wanted to do it. That's kind of the framework or the foundation of how you end up starting an org. So obviously, in the initial days, or like when I wanted to help, I actually lived in Minneapolis at the time, and I you don't just start being like, I'm going to start an org. I try to get involved with other organizations. And I couldn't find causes that really connected to me. I mean, a lot of times, and this could have changed, and I'm sure it depends on where you live, but with my experience, it was with internet, because I was really passionate about international development and like basically poverty and fighting poverty. And I couldn't find a tangible way to get involved with an organization doing that kind of work unless I was in that country. So I tried a few different ways, and it didn't actually work out. So eventually got to the path of like, okay, if I can't find the right fit, maybe we should do this ourselves. So my co-founder and myself at the time were like, all right, how about we do what we know how to do really well? How about we throw these like fun events and raise money and like just see what happens? And honestly, this was initially when we started, was just supposed to be throwing an event, raising money, giving the money to a partner, and move on and continue with our jobs, right? It was not supposed to be me leaving my job and doing this full time. That was never part of the plan. But we started doing that, and we got support really early on from the randomest places, and that really helps you, right? Like when you're doing something and people are listening and coming on board, it gives you that courage that you need early on to say, hey, there is something and people care. And guess what? There's so many other people like me who were looking for a way to volunteer for an org doing international work, who want to be involved and have a hands-on way to help. So we started getting the people on board quite easily after the first few months. I mean, it was just a couple, we had to beg family and friends in the first few, like the very first month, a couple of months, it was harder. But I would say even by the 6-month period, more and more people started getting interested, because by that point we'd already done our first event. So that's the background. The country aspect, we launched in 2008, and I usually tell people we really launched in 2011, 2012. And I'm going to say that, and the reason I say this is because I say for the first 3 years, it was just a learning. What we used to do is we used to raise this money, and we would find other international organizations who were doing great work, and we would just exactly what I told you, and we would give them the money. And then at some point, when we started getting bigger, I realized that this doesn't make that much sense, and I was getting more knowledgeable about the work and what it meant to do a sustainable water project. So then you start getting into things where you're understanding how you want things to be done, and perhaps you could do it a little bit better than the orgs. So we moved from this model of partnering with these large international orgs to going to a completely grassroots effort. It took a lot more work, because now you had to fly into these countries, go into remote villages, find partners, go through this whole process, and identify the right people to work with. So it was that kind of journey, but really in the initial days, it was just researching online like anyone would. It was almost like if you had money to donate and you would look up organizations online. We kind of did it at that level. So it's not bad. They're great orgs, but it's not the kind of work we do today.
Well, thank you for sharing that origin story. That was awesome.
You're welcome.
Sviaka, I'm going to pass it to you.
Yeah, Shilpa, such an inspirational story. I'm glad that you were able to share that with our club. And it's so cool how originally you guys started with just a handful of volunteers, and you're still able to maintain that 100% donation, even though now, as I imagine, you do have people who work full-time, including yourself, for the company. So that's actually really brave of you as well. Now that I think back, I mean, you came from this solid corporate background, working in management consulting, and then you just decided, I'm gonna I found my passion, I found my path, I know I want to dedicate my time full time to this that you're passionate about, and so you just left your job, so kudos for that.
Yeah, it was scary. But I did it, and I'm happy I did.
Yeah, I bet. So I know you mentioned a few of the additional programs that you engage with, and you showed some pictures where some of the kids were making soap, and then there was you spoke about the reusable pads program that you have. Now, for do you partner with other organizations for this, like especially for the reusable pads? I had heard of an organization, I think they're based in somewhere East Africa, and they're called AfriPads.
Yep, I'm very familiar with that. Actually based in Uganda as well, yeah.
Okay, so do you work with them, or do you do similar work?
So that's a good question, and they're all great orgs. So I want to say that first. So one of the things is we obviously, anytime we do this stuff, we totally believe in partnerships, right? Like that's what we're talking to you guys today too. And we always look for partnership because that's how you can do more work, right? So one of the challenges that we found is there's a lack of funding in this space. So if we partnered with another org, and we've definitely gone down this path, because why would we do it ourselves if someone else is doing it, right? Now, certain orgs are selling those pads, even though they're reusable. So there's a cost involved in that. So we've done the math, and we're like, okay, we buy X amount, then you're just giving it to people. What if you taught them how to make it? So that kind of answers that piece of it well, a little bit. Now there are other orgs that are teaching people how to make it as well. We're definitely not the only people who started doing this. Again, similar story, we'd probably have to pay for the trainers of those orgs. It's actually not that hard to make reusable pads. It's only, this is so crazy, and like the women watching this will definitely like appreciate. If you talk to like, you know, maybe if your mothers are old or your grandmothers, they used to use reusable pads. It's only like we've just been disrespectful to our environment in the last like few decades where we started using all these disposable products. So that knowledge is still there in the village elders. So we recognize, we were initially looking at, okay, do we hire people to come out and, you know, like we figured out how to make them ourselves. And then we could use that money to pay a local in our community as the teacher versus paying another org to bring people from outside to come in and do the classes. So we really think about these kinds of things. Like we look for any opportunity to give our locals a job. So it's not even like we're necessarily trying to do it for free. We're trying to do it where they'd have a job. Now, of course, if there was a situation we couldn't figure out how to do it, we'd bring someone in from the city or from like a different place. Like in that soap picture, for example, the person, I don't know if he was in the picture, but someone was brought in from Kampala because they didn't have that specific large-scale skill in this district. So if the skill isn't there, we'll bring in somebody. But we really like to build the capacity within the community so that they have the skills there, they can use it, the entrepreneurs can, I mean, they need jobs. So the entrepreneurs can use it to make money. You know, there's all these beautiful stories. We had this little girl in one of our classes last week. She's 13 years old, I think, and I can't remember her name, but she did the class, and one of the things she said after the class was her mom has a little trading center, and she was like, I'm going to go home and show my mom how to do this. We have material, we have cotton. Maybe my mom can make them and sell them. And the little girl had done all the math to figure out how it could be sold so it's affordable to the community. So it's those kinds of examples that, you know, it's hard in our mission statement to convey these kinds of stories, but it's like, that's why if a partnership works, by all means, we'll use it. But if there's an opportunity for jobs, we'd take that. So
yeah, thank you for sharing all these individual stories too of the communities and the individual people that you have really impacted through this. And you know, a lot of people don't think about you know, sanitation or even like sanitation services that are, you know, more gender specific, like this case with the pads, and how impactful that could really be to those people. So thank you for that work. And it seems like, at least through the stories that you've shared, there is this business aspect to everything, like both on the sustainability side, but also like, you know, right now where you're focusing, where you were telling how you want to make sure that those entrepreneurs, those people with entrepreneurial spirit are really empowered and think about these things as potential revenue generating projects that they could take to their community. So a good job.
Yeah. And I guess I'd add over there that none of the stuff that we do in our communities is given away for free. So what would we end up doing is they could be subsidized. There are subsidies involved depending on, you know, if it's a situation of famine and if there's a natural disaster. So I shouldn't say none. For the predominant part, there is a model of payment, and it's a really cool model. So when you saw those toilets, the part that I didn't tell you about is that the community has to pay like 40% to 60%, depends on the income level. Now they don't have money, so what do? They dig the holes, they provide bricks. And the reason is, it goes back to the sustainability message, it's ownership. If they put in the work, then they're going to value the product more. When you looked at the filters, all the community members are paying the full cost of that filter over sometimes 2-year period with a little bit of interest. So when that money comes back, it goes towards our local partners so they can do more water and sanitation programming. So it's all used for our water and sanitation work, but again, it's going back into, one, not creating a dependency. They bought the product, sometimes over 2 years, sometimes they're forgiven for the cost, but really we're trying to like really enforce this, and we're doing pretty well in most of the countries. And then in some places they just pay a small stipend. It really depends, but there's usually something put into it, whether it's the full cost or a certain portion, and it all goes into this model of not only should the individuals be sustainable and like have this revenue, our partners need to generate revenue so that they can hire people and they can keep doing this work. And of course, Surge needs to, but you know, we're figuring out our story. We seem to be doing a better job with our communities, but you know, it's a hard thing to do, because a lot of times in the aid world, people are really used to just getting stuff. And that only, if you do that, it only goes so far, because then the money runs out. But if you're able to even have them put in a little bit, 40% of the cost, you're now able to take that 40% of the money and put in another toilet. So it's just like, and we educate them and we train them on, like, this is why we're doing it. Even though other orgs may have come in here and done it all for free, this is why we're not. It's still the same amount of money. We're just going to make it go further. So it's a huge part of everything we do in every country, unless it's a natural disaster and like this, an extreme situation.
That's amazing work that you guys are doing. And we're running a little bit short on time for Q&A, but I did want to ask you, where do you see Surge going in the next 5 years? What does the future for Surge look like?
Wow. I would love to have, our vision is that we want every single person to have access to safe water, and hopefully with all the orgs in this space, we wouldn't be us achieving it by ourselves. We're going to get there. But on a smaller scale, that's like a visionary thing. But on a smaller scale, I hope that we can prove some of these models and really scale them. We're relatively new in this space when you consider like some of the orgs that have been here for a long time, and I'm seeing how we're doing certain things in a unique way. We're really trying to drive these like models of like entrepreneurship and sustainability, and like I'd love for those to be, these eco schools. There's like all these cool things that we're like experimenting with that I want to scale and I want to take to different communities, even without Surge physically being there, like for other people to take it to places. So really have our mission live beyond, much beyond, Surge. And
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we are looking forward to connecting with you more. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to our club this week. And for our members and viewers watching this video, we want to remind you that a link to the Surge website will be below the video, and we'll have some other relevant links as well. Definitely don't forget to leave a comment at the bottom of the meeting and let us know what you thought. If you have any questions for Shilpa, go ahead and ask them in the comments, and we'll see if we can get her to respond to your questions or feedback. Shilpa, I will turn it to you for the last words.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Miti and Sviako, for having me here, and to all your club members for listening. We're still primarily a volunteer-run organization, so please reach out to get involved, ask any questions. I'm super accessible when I'm not in a remote village. So I'd invite you to join us, in any capacity you're able to. And, I always say this, maybe water is not your thing, or there isn't, you're already Rotarian, so you're committed to service in some way, so it may not be as relevant here, but I always want to tell people that, find a cause that you're passionate about, and, dedicate a significant portion that you're able to with your life to it, because we have one world and one life, so let's make this world a better place.
Awesome. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys next week. Take care now.